Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Cooking Together live from Austin, Texas. Today we have a special guest with us from Los Angeles area. Her name's Alison Charbonneau, and we've been friends since she was in culinary school, where I was teaching in 2011. And I can't believe it's been that long, but anyway, I wanted to bring Alison on today so we could talk about her newest cookbook that's out and also make lunch together. And we're also going to talk about life after having kids and how our work has been influenced by that. So we have a lot that we want to catch up on, and welcome to the show, Alison.
Hi, Rachel. How are you?
Pretty
It's
good.
good to see you.
Thanks so much for being here. Something that I didn't mention in the intro is that we are both New Englanders. I'm from Connecticut and Allison's from Massachusetts, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Originally.
yeah. I know, I forget that. How
Yeah.
long have you been in Austin for?
I've been in Austin since 96.
Wow.
And
Okay.
when did you move away from
I've
Massachusetts?
been, yeah, for since 2003.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a while.
Quite a while. Almost 20 years. Wow.
Yeah.
And
So yeah, we both make trips back east regularly to visit family.
yeah.
Um, but Allison's in California, and we're in Texas. So yeah, so we met in Texas when you were in culinary school.
hmm
And how did you decide that you wanted to go to culinary school? What was the impetus for that?
Oh God, it was a lot going on then, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I had been working at a law firm as a secretary, a legal secretary for years, and I was just so miserable. And I knew I didn't want to do that, and I knew there was like a calling in me, but I didn't know what it was. And I remember I quit my job without anything lined up, and so then I didn't know what to do. So I traveled. That's when I went to India and Bali and started studying yoga um and I was just going, oh, I think I found macrobiotics in a book that I had. I don't know who gave me the book, but I had a book, this
Mhm.
Zen macrobiotics.
Oh yeah,
And
that was
and
the
it
book
just like
that
was,
David Briscoe. Someone gave him the same book. The
oh, really?
products. Yeah,
It was that book?
yeah.
That's so funny. I still have it. The cover's missing. It's like so raggedy. So I started reading that, and then the Kind Diet came out, and Alicia Silverstone was. I lived in Westwood at the time, and she was at UCLA talking about it. And so I walked down and I saw her talk about macrobiotics, and I was like, oh my god, I got so interested in it. And then I started just researching, and then I found the Natural Epicurean that um, coincidentally did like scholarships for yoga teachers. So I applied for that and I got the scholarship, and that was why I actually was like, you know what, this is a
Great.
sign.
That may have been the first time we ever did that. Because I
Oh, really?
at some point there was kind of like this new thing of combining the cooking and yoga, and they were going to offer a scholarship. So I remember it was somewhere after the school had the new ownership, and so
Yeah.
that's awesome. I didn't know that you had applied for that.
It was the only way I could go. I was so, because I hadn't worked for a couple years. I was like, yeah, so it was really, yeah, that it all worked out. So, but I always had a love for cooking. I just never really like, I knew, but I was more focused on health. So I guess it was like the macrobiotics kind of opened my eyes that, oh, I can be into health and cooking.
Mhm.
Whereas before I saw cooking as like, just like, Paula Dean, or just not, I don't know. Yeah, it just changed my eyes to it. And so it was, yeah, finding the Natural Epicurean was so, just changed my life, obviously. And everyone now that I meet from then, it's changed, it's, yeah, it's
Wow.
awesome.
Well, I've been following what you've been doing for all these years since you graduated, and The first big project that I knew about that you did was the the cookbook that you wrote all the recipes for. The what was it called? The Candida Cure,
The Candida Cure, yeah, yeah.
and that was a really beautiful book. And now you have your own cookbook,
Yeah.
everyday recipes for your Candida diet. Yeah, so today we're going to be making a recipe from Alison's cookbook. And I have a similar one on my blog, but I'm going to hopefully be able to put this exact recipe up later on my blog towards the end of the week so you can make it at home. But it's a Thai spiced lentil soup recipe. It's going to be really delicious. I don't know if you've cooked with red lentils before, but this is what they look like when they're dry. And I rinse them off a few times. And they've just been soaking in some water for a couple of hours. Actually, no, about an hour or a little less than an hour. And I'm just doing that because I figured that they would cook a little bit faster and we'd be able to get our soup made or curry made really quickly. So while we're waiting for Alison to join back on, I'm going to do a little prep for the curry. So curry has just kind of a few different veggies in it, and you start with sauteing some onion. So I'm going to slice that up first, take the peel off. You can save this to put in vegetable stock later. And there's a lot of ways to dice an onion, but I like this way of doing it. Can you see the overhead, Nelson?
Yeah.
I like to have the root end facing out so that that holds the onion together while I'm slicing all the way through, but I try to hold it together on that end so that when we dice it, it will create these uniform size pieces, so it's a nice even dice. So that's probably all that we need. We can save the rest of this onion for something else. We've been getting some really nice fresh onions. This one came from one of our CSA deliveries that we get. I think it was a Good Apple one that this came from on Sunday. And they're just not as pungent as the dry ones, I think. So
Looks like Allison's coming back.
oh, good. Hi,
Okay.
Allison.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. I've just been talking about your recipe, the red lentil curry, and I'm just doing the last bit of prep. So it gave me a chance to go get my fuel for the stove because I had run out.
Oh.
And then I chopped up some onion. So do you remember when you were writing this recipe for the red lentil curry? Is this something that you make often at home, or?
I do actually, yeah. I make, it's one of those recipes that I make so much I don't even look at the recipe anymore.
Yeah, and you can put different vegetables in, right, if you don't
Mhm.
have
Yes.
exactly what it calls for.
Right. Like sometimes I'll put kabocha squash in it. Actually, it's really good. I'll cut it in really small cubes. Um,
I have some butternut squash that
mhm.
I wanted to use up because I just had a little end of it. So,
Yep.
and then the other thing I'm adding that wasn't in the recipe was I had some yellow squash that I had peeled the outside of for some zucchini noodles, and I had a lot left over.
Uh-huh.
So it just looks white now, but it was a yellow squash.
Yeah, that's funny. I saw that, or I was thinking it was like a sweet potato. No, that sounds great. Yeah. I know when I was in culinary school, I remember I thought that I would baking was like going to be my area. And I remember, I think it was Damaris. I think that's her name. Anyway, she was like, wait until the end of the training to figure out what, to,
Oh yeah.
and she was
Demetra?
right. Yeah, Demetra, yeah. And she was right. Cooking for me is so much more enjoyable now than baking. And I think it's creative.
Yeah, I think sometimes, like, if you're not working as a chef and you're cooking as your leisure activity, baking is just so fun. And it's like you're making it for celebrations or you're making it for a treat. And then when you're cooking for a living, you're just like, I don't think I have time to do all that, plus make all of these meals. And then I don't know, for me, I just really got into making healing meals, and desserts became like way on the periphery of what I do, but it's still fun, and it's more, when you want to make something fun. You make amazing desserts. I love all of your Instagram videos and Pinterest things. You guys should look up Alison on Pinterest, Natural Tasty Chef. We'll put up all the links later so people can find you on there. But I love all the things you do. Like, I haven't tried it yet, but the Twix bar.
Oh yeah, Matt loves those. Yeah, those are very, very fun. It is fun doing stuff like that too. But yeah, you're right. I think also Matt and I, like, we love using up everything in our fridge. So it's always like a challenge, with the cooking to, like, how can we use everything?
Right. That's what I was thinking about with this recipe, because when I went into the fridge, well, I guess whenever I'm making a soup or a curry, I want to use up the last bit. So like this celery was actually the middle part of the celery with all the leaves on it.
Mm-hmm.
Which, some people might be like, oh, this isn't worth anything, I'll just compost it. But you can actually get like over a cup's worth of celery. And then the leaves I'm just going to save and put in a freezer bag and use them for stock later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't, and then I didn't have to break into a whole new stock of celery to make the curry.
I like the freezer bag idea too. I use that now also when I have odds and ends that I'm not ready to make like a stock with. Throw it in the freezer in a plastic bag and a Ziploc. That's a very good tip.
Just last night we were making a chicken bone broth, and it was ready to put the vegetables in at the end.
Yeah.
And I went in the freezer and I had a whole Ziploc bag. I was like, yes, I don't have to chop anything now. But it takes discipline, because every time you cook, you have to set aside the little bits of veggies that, but I'd rather take the time then than take the time when I'm making the stock. So, so this recipe calls for fresh ginger and fresh turmeric, and I only had dried turmeric. So what do you recommend for that when someone, like, if you have like a tablespoon of fresh turmeric, how much dried turmeric do you think you would use?
Yeah, so turmeric is so potent, I feel like. I would probably start with like half a teaspoon of the powder.
Okay, great.
And see, I notice like sometimes if I do too much, it just overpowers the whole dish.
Okay. So I'm just kind of grating up my ginger and garlic. I know you could chop the garlic, but I've got this grater already here.
That's such a good idea, though. Yeah.
It does kind of, well, it makes it smaller, and I think it makes the dish more flavorful when you grate the garlic. I don't always do it, but I do it a lot for Indian dishes.
Yeah. Also, I've sometimes you can. I think Rachel Ray gave me this tip a long time ago: peeling the ginger and keeping it in the freezer, and then grating the ginger.
My mother does that too. She keeps ginger in the freezer that's already peeled.
I
Yeah.
learned that from an old woman in an Oriental market.
Oh,
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's a good tip.
yeah. So I was buying ginger, and she came up to me and said, "Peel it and stick it in the freezer."
Yeah.
So I guess I'm going to start making the curry and we can keep
Hmm.
talking. But there'll be some point where it just needs to simmer and we can chat
Yeah.
some more.
Hmm.
So I'm going to use coconut oil, right?
Yeah, I can tell
That'll
it. Yeah.
that'll
Warm.
go well with the coconut milk that we put in later.
Hmm.
So I'm starting with onion, carrot, celery. Then I've got some butternut squash and zucchini that I'm just throwing in because I had it. And then towards the end, we'll add some greens. I've got kale and Swiss chard mixed together. And then I have cilantro. Does that go in towards the end or as a garnish or something?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I usually, after I turn the heat off, maybe stir some in and then mostly garnish with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll start with the onion here. How many red lentil dishes do you think you made at the Natural Epicurean?
Gosh, I know. I think we even made like a naan out of lentils at one point. Does that sound right? Like a
What kind
flat.
of lentils? What'd you say?
I think we made like a flatbread or something out of lentils at one point. Didn't we?
Oh, we did make a flatbread with chickpea. What do you call that stuff? Chickpea
Chickpea flour?
flour. You remember?
Yeah.
There was
Uh-huh.
probably something else in someone else's class that was a red
Oh,
lentil.
yeah.
Oh, we made dosas. That's like
Oh,
a flat
okay.
pancake kind of thing. We made
Yes,
that
that's what I'm thinking of.
lentils.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are so good. Those would be good to make in the summer because you have to let the batter ferment,
Uh-huh.
and it doesn't work very well in the winter time. You need some heat in the room.
Right. Speaking of, I just made my first homemade sourdough bread
Oh, cool.
on Monday. Yeah, because it wasn't that hot for the last 2 weeks. It took a while for my starter, but then it started getting very warm here, and then eventually, yeah, it worked, and it was
And
awesome.
what kind of what ingredients did you use in it? Like, what was your starter made from?
The starter just from whole wheat. What did I start with? I think I did brown rice and whole wheat flour.
Okay, cool.
And I fed it with the whole wheat flour, and then I just made like a traditional sourdough with actually all-purpose flour using a cup of the wheat starter, and it was very sourdoughy, which was awesome, and it tasted like a wheat loaf, which was interesting. It was good.
So I missed what flour did you use for the not the sourdough starter, but the actual bread?
For the bread, I used just all-purpose.
Oh, okay.
Did all-purpose, yeah.
But the starter gave it a really strong flavor, which is good.
Yeah, yeah. So it was my first loaf, so then I wanted to do it by, with the recipe, but now I'll start kind of branching out. It was
Yeah.
definitely a labor of love.
Right. One of my good friends here in Austin is really amazing at making artisan sourdough loaves, and she sells them. I don't know if she's doing it right now, but she makes a sourdough starter out of rye,
Uh-huh.
and that is really good. I don't know what makes it so different, but and then the one that I learned when I took a class from her was sprouted spelt flour.
Okay.
So there's, infinite possibilities with different flours and grains, but that was the one that I learned how to make.
Mm. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I learned after I went through that process and I came home with the sourdough and I was struggling to keep the starter alive because you have to feed it
Mhm.
and take some out and put more flour, and it was expensive because I was using the rye flour and
Yes.
um, well, I read after that, and then I made like another 2 batches of the bread, and then I didn't have time to keep up with it.
Yeah.
I read that you can actually keep the starter in the freezer and then take it out when you're ready to use it. You have to wait a few days for it to revive and feed
Oh,
it.
that's a great idea.
But it's
Yeah.
not like you have to keep it going every single day. Or like if you go on a trip,
Yeah.
you don't want to have to bring your starter with you on the plane.
Kidding. I know. Well, yeah, speaking of, because Matt was like, do you really think you can take on another baby right now? Because every morning I'd wake up, I'd be like, I have to go feed my starter.
Right, right.
But that is a good tip, putting it in the freezer if you feel like you can't tend to it.
Yeah, so look that up because I'm sure there's a way to do it
Yeah.
where it'll work. Okay, so I think the onions are ready to add the next thing. Should I do the carrots and celery or should I do the ginger and garlic next?
I would do the ginger and garlic.
Okay.
And then, just maybe just because you've grated it so it's very small, maybe just 1 minute or so, you could add the carrots and celery.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure it's starting to smell very fragrant there, huh?
It smells so good. We actually used coconut oil last night to pan fry some plantains.
Oh, yum, I love
And
that.
that's like the best tasting thing ever. Oh my God. We were making a recipe for my new subscription course. And
Ooh.
we're getting into the section of, or the theme is Latin American cuisine. And the reason why I wanted to do that theme was we got inspired a couple weeks ago to do a green mole. It's a very fresh mole with cilantro and pumpkin seeds and tomatillos. So anyway, I wanted to do that, and then I just started thinking of a whole bunch of other recipes from like the Caribbean and South America. So I'm like, let's just make it Latin American theme because it's a little broader. So the one we did last night was a white fish. We had black cod with a coconut basil sauce. That's ginger and garlic, basil and cilantro, and you blend it up.
It was amazing.
That sounds amazing.
And so then I was like, well, that would go really well with some plantains.
I'm going to show a picture of it real quick.
Oh yeah, I was going to show a picture of it. So this will be, I think this can be the next recipe for next week in the subscription. So you'll get that in your inbox, Alison.
Ooh, yay. It's great because it just gives you, new, like, I forgot about, frying plantains, for instance, but I love that. So it's a good, you can get stuck sometime in your thinking of cooking.
I know. It happens to all of us.
Well, and it's nice too because you're in Austin, and I don't know, it's just
you guys probably pretty much follow the same seasons we do.
We do, yeah. So I have seen the plantains in the store, but I just keep walking by them. I don't know, I just forgot about them, I guess.
Yeah, plantain. I didn't know this until maybe the last couple years, but plantains are really good for your stomach. Like the lining of your stomach, whatever's in plantains. So I can always use that.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll add the squash and the zucchini since that wasn't in the recipe.
Yeah, because the lentils, they cook so quickly.
And I guess I'm going to drain these lentils. I rinsed them a couple times. And then I soaked them just because I thought that would help them cook a little more quickly.
Yeah.
So I've been wanting you to come up with a cookbook about how to eat for pregnancy and like postpartum because I loved all of your posts you were doing when you were pregnant with your daughter. Have you thought about doing a cookbook focused on that?
I have. I keep coming
one
back
day when you have time.
Yeah. I do keep coming back to that because I think it would be really great just because once you're pregnant, I don't know, yeah, everything does shift. Like I noticed, you have to be very aware of what you're eating and making sure you're eating enough. And then all the different stages, like in the first trimester, you're usually nauseous. So there's like, how do you eat while you're feeling nauseous? So ginger was like a very good friend of mine.
Yeah,
Yeah, that.
I found out about kitchery when I was pregnant with Isabel. I actually knew what it was, but I never made it for myself. And then the midwife that I had at the time said, well, you need to make kitchery for yourself once a day or every couple days and just eat it 3 times a day or whenever you're hungry, because it has, fat, protein, carbs. It's got ginger and turmeric. And that kept me alive for a few months because I literally couldn't eat anything else because everything else would make me feel sick.
Yep.
Like magazines with really bad advice on pregnancy would say, keep saltine crackers by the bed.
Yeah.
And that was like the worst thing I could think of. Just the thought of it made me sick.
I know, it's so funny, huh? There are pictures that I took when I was pregnant in the first trimester that I still look at and they almost make me feel nauseous again.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah, if you want to convince yourself not to have any more children, you just have to remember those first 3 months daily. But some people don't have that problem. I don't know. They're just lucky.
I know, yeah. I was right, but yeah.
So I added the red lentils, but I got ahead of myself because I haven't added the spices yet.
Oh, okay.
Do you
That's
think
fine.
I should go ahead and add some spices?
Yeah, I would add all of the spices probably now, the dry spices. I don't know if it was you who worded it this way or someone else, maybe David Briscoe, saying, how with the dried spices, it's kind of like you're waking them up. So you add them early on in the recipe, then as the fresh ones are already alive and awake, so waiting till the end.
So like the cilantro, we'd wait till the end because we want this to stay fresh.
Fresh, yeah. Yeah.
I bet that was David that said that.
Yeah, it gives me
That's a
such
good
a
one.
visual.
Yeah, so we had some of the same teachers. Did Warren Kramer come and teach while you were there? Yeah, so he was one of my
Yeah.
macrobiotic teachers too.
Yeah. Yeah, he comes to LA quite a bit, so I would help him when he
Oh,
would come out.
oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, several times. He would he comes out like 4 times a year,
Okay.
and I would assist with his
Oh, cool.
demos and stuff. Yeah. And then David Briscoe comes out too.
Yeah, I remember he was doing some private chef work for somebody near you.
Oh.
He did that for like a month or two, but now that's been like 3 years ago, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Do I put coconut milk in now or water, or what do you suggest?
I would suggest putting in the coconut milk. And then the recipe calls for 4 cups of water on top of that, but you could eyeball and see how much you need after you put the coconut milk.
Add the water gradually as needed to get.
Yeah, because I mean it depends. Like for me, I like it pretty thick, kind of like more of a stewy texture. So yeah, with the coconut milk, is it covering everything?
It's just about covering it, so I might just add a tiny bit of water and then
Yeah.
let it simmer.
Yeah, and then let it simmer. It should only take like 10 to 15 minutes before the lentils are nice and soft. Or maybe quicker since you've soaked them.
Cool. Okay, so I'll put the lid on. Yeah, I think a cookbook with advice about the different stages of pregnancy, and then like the postpartum thing is so important too, right? So many people I cringe every time I hear this, that somebody that just had a baby is going to go on a diet because they want to lose the baby fat, and I'm just like, no, don't
I
do
know.
that. You're going to harm yourself, right?
I know.
I forgot to put in the
Oh,
curry
the
paste.
best part. Yeah, throw it in.
Too hard
That's
talking
the
to cook.
great part about cooking.
So what I'll do, since I forgot to put it in, I'll just kind of mix it with a little bit of water,
Oh
coconut.
yeah, that's a great idea. Kind of dilute it a little bit, then it can mix in a little nicer.
But one of the things I was reading in your cookbook that I'm using today was you used to have this dish that was like eggs and greens and avocado or
Oh
something,
yeah, yeah.
which sounds super nourishing for when you're trying to nurse a baby and
Yes.
recover.
Hmm.
So, like
Um,
focusing on nourishment rather than dieting is the way to go, because then
yes.
your body's getting what it needs and you're not fighting against nature, right?
Oh my God, it's so right. Like, yes. And then the body, when you nurse, your body naturally lets go of any pregnancy weight. So you really don't have to worry about that at all. Because I understand that is for women, to get pregnant, that's like your body changes. Um,
Yeah.
but, the body is meant to change and then go back. It's if you just give it what it's supposed to, it knows what to do. And it truly did. Like, I feel exactly how I felt before I had my daughter now. Like my body feels exactly the same. Like, yeah. I mean, I remember when I was younger thinking that if I had kids, I would never go back to, how I looked before then. Yeah, it's so different when you can give yourself the proper nourishment and
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, if for some reason you can't nurse your baby, that gets kind of disrupted, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's like a catch 22. If you're dieting after you have the baby, then you're probably not going to be able to produce milk.
Right. Yeah.
But I know there's all different circumstances, what can happen medically. Some people just can't um, nurse a baby, but luckily
Yeah.
it's more of a something that's encouraged now instead of discouraged.
Yeah. I mean, in the U.S., it really isn't encouraged, especially where women they don't get a very long maternity leave, and
Oh, right, that's true.
so it is hard, but um,
That's
yeah,
true. I mean, some countries have like 1 to 2 years of maternity leave or
amazing.
family leave,
Yeah,
which is a very humane way, like a good way of setting up a child's life, right? If they can have a year or
totally.
two home with their parents instead of what we have to deal with scrambling around.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and yeah, that would be a very good cause for activism.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, so postpartum, I focused a lot on, healthy fats and protein and leafy greens, and really made a conscious effort to stay away from sugar. I think, which helped a lot. And then because I was so nauseous in the first trimester, I got used to teaching. Like my husband really learned a lot of cooking from me, so I would sit there and he would cook. So right after I had the baby, he was able to do that for me too, which helped a lot.
Oh, good.
So I would kind of tell him, "Oh, can you make me this?" And he was able to, yeah,
Yeah,
because
so
it's
that's the best case scenario. If somebody else can cook for you when you're
yeah.
just spending all of your energy with the baby, and
Hmm.
that's the ideal situation for sure.
That actually is what I gift when my friends have kids now. I'll gift them a week cooking session. So I'll make a whole week's work, like kind of what I do for my personal chef
Oh,
clients, and my they always like love it because when you right after you have a baby to have all this fresh food show up is the best gift.
right.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it's boiling here. So now that it's boiling, I could turn it down a little bit.
Mhm.
So if anybody wants to get one of these big pots, but they don't want to spend $300, I got the best deal ever on this pot. It's not, it's not a Le Creuset or a strobe or stove, but it's from, oh shoot, Bed Bath and Beyond. I was looking
Uh-huh.
for a Dutch oven because I was going to be doing a bunch of videos, and this one just popped up on my computer screen. And I think because it was on sale and I had a coupon, I got it for $40.
Oh my gosh.
And it's a 6 quart. It's a really heavy. I've made so many different things in it already in the last 2 months.
Mhm.
And the only thing that doesn't seem the very best quality is the lid. I kind of have to twist it on every time.
Mm.
Only like a 1/4 inch, but I'm like, I wonder what's going to happen over time if that's going to come off. But I know you can easily get replacement lids, so I'm not too worried about that.
I mean, it
But
looks beautiful.
but the construction of it seems really, really solid, and um, so I'm happy with it so far. And I didn't have to spend $300.
Yeah, I love it. It's very beautiful. Yeah. I just pulled mine out too because I made the bread in that.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
yeah.
be careful because
I
I ruined, kind of ruined one of my Le Creuset. It was already pretty old and beat up, but because it was literally a very old pot, but I put it in a 500-degree oven because the bread was supposed to go in at 500, and then as soon as you put it in, you turn it down. And I think the pot is only rated to like 425 or 450, so the enamel started
oh.
coming off the pot. So it's still usable and it's not ruined, but you can see
Oh.
that some of the enamel came off of the top and the sides.
Yeah.
So that was a mistake.
Mhm.
It doesn't withstand 500 degrees, but
Well, yeah. I wouldn't have I would have thought that that would have been fine too though.
mhm.
Yeah, so I was using mine yesterday to make beans. I stopped using it I think when I got pregnant because they're so heavy. I kind of packed it away, but now I feel like I can.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, I don't use this a lot in the summer because it does heat up the whole room.
Mhm.
It's a cast iron,
Yeah.
but it's nice to use when you can.
How warm is it there?
We've been lucky. The last 2 days it cooled off, and we've had 70s, so we don't even have the air conditioning on today. But
That's
prior to
great.
that, we had maybe 5 days or so, or it was like high 80s or mid 90s, and it
Yeah.
felt like summer was here and was never going to leave.
Yeah. That's how it feels here now.
Did you guys, what was the rainy season like this year?
It actually was a little delayed and it was raining until just, I want to say last month. We got rain pretty late. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, so we got a good amount I felt like this year, which was nice.
So hopefully you won't get a drought situation this year.
I mean, we'll see. I think we're always in that kind of situation, but yeah, I love the rain because it reminds me of being back east.
Yeah, the rain always makes me feel like there's life and there's hope, and you know, when it doesn't rain for a long time, it starts to feel desperate.
Mhm. Yeah.
I just put a little bit of salt in there. It's getting there. The lentils aren't quite done.
No.
Do you remember? Well, actually, we changed it a little bit once you were a student, or after you were a student. Who was your Ayurveda teacher? Was it Felicia?
Yes.
Okay. So I
Yeah.
don't remember did we used to do a practicum, like a test at the end of the unit, or not really?
I don't think so.
So, at some point, we developed a practicum for each unit. And
Hmm.
so Ayurveda had a unit where we cooked, each student would prepare their own meal and then present it to the teachers.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And
Not do
they
that.
also had a written test on a different day.
Hmm.
Um,
I think we did group ones like that. I think we got together as groups and had to cook things and present.
yeah, I think so too, because I think I have a picture of your class from
Hmm.
one of those days. Do you have that picture on there of
I think
culinary
so.
school?
Yep.
I had a group picture of your class.
Yep. It's okay.
So yeah, at some point we changed it. So instead of the group practicum in macrobiotics, I still did it as a group, but
Hmm.
in Ayurveda we did. Um, each student made a lentil dish, so it was either red lentils or moong dal, whatever we had, and they would be able to spice it however they wanted, and
Hmm.
they could use coconut oil or sesame oil or olive oil, and use different spices, different flavorings. You could put coconut milk in it if you wanted or not. And
Hmm.
then they had to make a vegetable sabji, so like a mixed vegetable saute with spices, and then you
Uh-huh.
add some water to kind of steam it at
Hmm.
the end.
Yeah.
And then the last dish was a, a chutney. I think that's, I'm trying to remember if they made rice. I don't think so. So then they made a chutney to go with it. And so basically, they chose one of the three doshas and they would try to customize the dal, the chutney, and the vegetable sabji to be like pacifying for that dosha. So it was a good test. It kind of wrapped up all of the things that they learned in that unit. But whenever I make red lentils, I think about that practice.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, that was actually Ayurveda was what had me kind of looking into realizing that I don't feel the best when it's very hot. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I never really paid attention to that, but yeah, I
Yeah,
notice.
I
Yeah,
have the same issue with heat. I kind of feel like I'm a flower that just starts wilting.
hmm.
Like I can't quite open back up. I'm just
Yeah.
to like douse my head with water or something if I'm out in the heat.
Hmm. Whereas I have another friend who just loves it. The humidity, the heat, she just loves it. But for me, it's very taxing on my body, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah,
but that's why Garden Springs is so amazing over there.
I know. We don't know when it's going to open back up. It's kind of a problem because it's so crowded there in the hot weather that
Yeah.
for them to open it up right now doesn't make much sense.
Yeah.
Um, and I like to think that it's recovering now from all the ground pollution because there hasn't been as much traffic in the area, and then also there haven't been people swimming in it. So it makes me happy to think that it's being used by the wildlife now and not being overrun with people and their sunscreen and
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, I know it's really interesting seeing the kind of earth heal,
yeah.
somebody
which it needed.
Yeah.
Somebody asked, I have a few friends who either hate or are allergic to onions. Since onions are such a common component in a lot of recipes, what do you do to compensate for the loss
Hmm.
of that layer of flavor?
That's a good question. I used to cook.
Repeat the question.
Yeah, so the question has to do with onions. Someone said, um, I know somebody who doesn't cook with onions or doesn't like onions or whatever.
Can't eat
And
them.
since onions, or can't eat them, since onions are like the base of so many soups and curries and sauces, what do you do if you can't have them to
Yeah.
compensate for that? And I used to cook without onions because my digestion was so poor. I really struggled to digest onions. Now I do well with onions, but for a while I couldn't eat them. But do you have any recommendations for like adding something to your dish to compensate for that loss of flavor?
Yeah, I've cooked for people in the past also who either can't have onions or don't like them. And I mean, I guess I just, leave them out and then rely more on if they can eat garlic and ginger and the turmeric, which is nice.
Mm.
Or, the celery, carrots, more of the heartier vegetables that make the base, sometimes red pepper.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I think with the right seasoning too, not forgetting to add like sea salt and seasoning. I think that it usually is not that big of an issue to make it still flavorful.
Yeah. I agree with all of those suggestions. I was actually able to eat garlic when I couldn't eat onion, which was
Uh-huh.
interesting. They're related, and you would think that they're kind of the same, but I didn't have any problems digesting garlic at all, whereas onion bothered my stomach. So
Huh.
the other thing, I was able to eat shallots before I could go back to eating onions, and those are kind of a
Yeah.
hybrid between onions and garlic. They're milder.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also recommend, I know some people are just philosophically against eating onions for whatever reason,
Mm-hmm.
but if you're not and you just want to try to eat them, I recommend cooking them for a really long time, almost till they're caramelized, because it
Mm-hmm.
breaks them down, makes them easier to digest.
Yep.
But if you just don't want to have them for whatever reason, I was happy for probably 3 or 4 years just not using them at all. I think when you don't use them, you get used to the way things taste without onions, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not that difficult. So I would, just like you said, leave them out,
Yep.
but don't forget about the carrots and the onions. Saute those for a while because they do change in flavor as you cook them. Don't just
Yep.
throw them in and boil them.
Yeah.
Saute them for a while, and that gives a nice savory flavor to your dish that you're not going to get if you don't cook them a while.
Yeah, it makes a nice base. Uh, and then I think also like it was funny because when you were talking about culinary school, you would never, I would think the opposite, but it always was, we always undersalted everything. I remember you guys always telling us, did you add salt?
Oh, yeah.
Because I think you hear so much to stay away from salt, from traditional like health people, and it's like you can use sea salt. Sea salt, actually the body needs it, and to not forget to use that, because that's what also brings the flavor out.
And cook it into your food rather than sprinkling it on at the table, because you can
Right.
absorb it into your body better
Yeah.
than when it's just put on at the last minute.
And
That's
layering it, I
definitely
saw
true.
you doing. Yeah.
What were you
Like
going
at each,
to say?
I said layering it, like how I saw you doing, like at each kind of stage. Once you add the onion and the carrot and celery, a little bit of sea salt. Maybe when you add, a little bit more, a little bit of sea salt.
Yeah, instead of just dumping it in all at once, because you really don't know. Well, a couple of things about that. When you add salt a little bit at a time, it will absorb into the vegetables or the lentils that you're cooking. Whereas if you put it all in at the end and just stir it, it'll be in the broth, but it won't be actually cooked into the food itself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then also, I think you can kind of judge a little bit better how much you need if you put it in a little at a time.
Totally, yes.
So I bet this is close to done. Do you think we could add the, Allison can't see the overhead, but it looks like it's
I'd add the greens, yeah. I'd add the greens.
pretty creamy. So
Hmm.
I'm just going to take a little out so I can test it for salt and then add the greens. So I did a mixture of Swiss chard and kale. This was actually all from our garden. It's like the tail end of greens because it's getting too hot.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
And
this is,
then, yep, the soup is so hot, the greens should just get very soft quickly.
yeah, in fact, the heat is off and they look like they're already wilted.
Yeah, it's perfect.
And then, so some people might say, aren't soups and curries for the cold weather? But what would you recommend? I mean, I guess I always think that you can have soups and curries year round. It's just about kind of the temperature you serve them at, maybe the ingredients that you put in.
Hmm.
You might want to put more cooling vegetables, more coconut milk, cilantro, you
Hmm.
put a squeeze of lime
Yeah.
if it's a hot day. But do you have any thoughts about that, like eating soup or curry in the summer versus the winter?
Yeah, no, I agree with what you said, kind of like how you use the summer squash in there. And then, I usually serve that with rice, and instead of using a short grain rice, which I might use in the winter, I'd switch to a long grain rice to serve it with. And that's a good point too. The coconut oil, you could use more in the winter, and olive oil, and then switch to coconut more in the summertime. Yeah, I do. I Soups like that I will do all year round.
So I think, I only added just a little bit of water, but I also only used a cup of red lentils, whereas your recipe said a cup and a half.
Hmm.
So if I had put the full cup and a half of lentils, it would have required extra water.
Yeah,
So it's totally fine just to add the water as you go and see
yeah,
if you have luck with that. And we are going to need to make some rice before we eat this today, but it has so many vegetables in it you could actually just eat it on its own too. I'm looking for my scoop here. Um, so before we finish today, Allison, I wanted to ask you about some of the like ways that people can follow you and projects that you have going on. I remember you saying that you were starting to work on a online course for personal chefs, for
yeah.
somebody that wants to become a personal chef or
Hmm.
wants
Yeah,
to kind of build their skills as a
yeah,
personal chef. Do you want to say a few things about
yeah. Yeah, so that's the next thing. So after I finished this cookbook, I my last thing I just finished up a 1 week kind of candida diet meal plan. So that
that?
was my latest thing, and now that that's done and up on my website, I am finally able to focus on the personal chef training course, and that's more for people who want to maybe take on a client or two, and they just don't know where to start, like the kind of the logistics of it, um,
There's so
how
much
to,
to learn, right? That we both had
yeah,
to learn as we were doing it.
yeah. I think the cool thing about the an online course for it is that you can take on like it's not like I don't feel like someone would have to do the whole course before they took on a client. You could kind of take on a client and skim through the course, and oh, how do I structure the package for this client? Oh, kind of move to that section and figure that
So
out.
it can be like ongoing
Support kind of.
support for
Yeah,
your personal chef business, really.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because when I did it, it was 2012, I think, and yeah, I'm kind of creating what I wished was around when I started.
That is perfect.
Yeah.
And then
So
you're still doing a lot of you're still doing a lot of stuff on your blog,
Mhm.
or do you want people to find you like on your blog or on Pinterest or either one? Because they can click on recipes on Pinterest and it'll take them to your blog, right?
That's true. Yeah, I pin a lot on Pinterest at Natural Tasty Chef, and then on my website, I've been uploading videos to YouTube, and everything is under Natural Tasty Chef. So
Okay, so
the
that's easy to find you.
yeah, the videos are fun, and so yeah, just trying to find the time to do all of it because I enjoy the pictures and the videos and recipe testing, but it's just with Senna now, it's hard to find the time to
Yeah.
do it all.
Oh, of course. And you can benefit from the years that you were before she was born and you were taking tons of pictures of food and
Yeah.
creating lots of recipes and kind of um, revisit all of that material because other people don't know it's there. And
Yeah. No, it's true, yeah. And the last place we lived, we had such good lighting for food photography, and here the windows are tinted, which is wonderful for the heat, but it does not make for good photos.
oh, right.
So, yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to work around that, but yeah, so I have been relying on old pictures and stuff, but yeah, so basically at Natural Tasty Chef you can find almost all of that stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, it was
Well,
fun seeing
I wish
you.
I could send you a bowl of this.
I know. It looks beautiful.
So that's what I love about cookbooks. You know, you don't have to follow the recipe exactly or anything, but they just give you ideas and
Hmm.
inspiration. You know,
Hmm.
um, what am I going to make? What's for dinner? Or what are we going to have for lunch? Or and I love making things like soups and curries because you can make a big batch and
Hmm.
then heat it up and add a fresh garnish like I did here. A little bit of lime juice and cilantro. You can just add that fresh every time you heat it up, and it's
Hmm.
like it doesn't taste like leftovers.
Right.
And curry is something that tastes good the second and third day. Sometimes it tastes better the second day.
Actually, yeah, it does because it has
Whereas
time.
like a salad, you want to eat that the first day.
Totally. I agree. Yeah. Yeah, it looks beautiful.
Well, thank you so much for coaching me through the red lentil curry and telling us what you've been up to. And we'll definitely send people your way with your website and your different links to your recipes and stuff.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day, you guys.
You too.
All right.
Say hi to
Bye.
everyone there for us.
I will. Okay. Bye.
Bye.